Assalamu alaikum students. Welcome to your virtual biology classroom. In our today's class, we are going to start with a new lesson, that is enzymes, and how we are going to learn how enzymes control the biochemical reactions in living organisms. So the objectives for your today's class are that by the end of this lesson, you'll be able to understand that biochemical reactions in living organisms must be controlled. You will understand how enzymes can act as biological catalysts, and you'll be able to explain and list down the factors that affect the enzymatic activity. Let's begin with a brief introduction of enzymes. What are enzymes? Before we start off with the actual definition of enzymes, we need to know that the human body is composed of different types of cells, tissues, and other complex organs. And in order to function efficiently, there are certain chemicals released by our body to speed up the biological processes like digestion, like respiration, excretion, and other metabolic activities. So enzymes play an important role in all the living organisms by regulating all these biological processes. So what are actually enzymes? Enzymes are protein in nature. They function as biological catalysts. They can alter or speed up chemical reactions, and they themselves remain unchanged at the end of the reaction. When we talk about catalysts, what is actually a catalyst? So catalysts are those substances which can alter or speed up a chemical reaction without themselves being chemically changed at the end of the reaction. The vast majority of enzymes are proteins with catalytic capabilities that are essential for maintaining various life processes. Metabolic processes and other chemical reactions in the cells are carried out by a set of enzymes that are necessary to sustain life. For example, if we talk about a compound potassium chlorate, so it naturally breaks down, or we can say it naturally decomposes into potassium chloride and oxygen gas, but this reaction occurs very slowly and at a very high temperature. When a potassium chlorate is strongly heated in a test tube, oxygen is given off, but gentle heating will only melt the potassium chlorate and no oxygen will be produced. If we add a little manganese oxide to this reaction, what will happen? The reaction will be carried out at a lower temperature, and manganese oxide will speed up the reaction. So at the end of the reaction, the same mass of manganese oxide remains, and it shows that it has not been changed in the reaction. So manganese oxide is an inorganic catalyst, and inorganic catalysts are not destroyed by boiling or by the changes in the pH of solution. In the same way, complex apparatus and high temperatures are required to break down carbohydrates, fats, or proteins in the laboratory. However, cells can carry out these same reactions quite rapidly without having to raise the body temperature. Cells carry out these reactions using catalysts, and these catalysts are known as enzymes. Now look at this figure. This figure is going to explain you a little more about enzymatic activities. So just imagine a chemical reaction as the process of rolling a huge stone up a hill so that it rolls down and it breaks into tiny pieces. Imagine the huge stone as a reactant, and imagine the tiny pieces into which the huge stone is breaking down as products. And this man is representing activation energy. What is activation energy? It is actually the energy needed to roll the stone up the hill. That means the energy needed to start a chemical reaction. So once over the hill, the rest of the reaction will occur. The stone rolls down and breaks down into tiny pieces, which we call products. Activation energy is any energy that is needed to start a chemical reaction. Enzymes also provide an alternative pathway with lower activation energy required to start a chemical reaction. If we talk about this example, that means that they are actually lowering the height of the hill so that the reaction occurs rapidly. If we talk about our bodies or human bodies, what happens? In our bodies, enzymes speed up the breakdown of glucose and fats to carbon dioxide and water at body temperature, that is 37 degrees Celsius. No strong heat or fire is required to start the reaction. So this is happening in a human body. Now, what reactions do the enzymes catalyze? What types of reactions can enzymes catalyze? One of the most important reactions that occur in human body is digestion. Enzymes catalyze the process of digestion. You know that some food molecules are large and insoluble in water. These large molecules cannot diffuse through the cell surface membrane. Obviously, they need to be broken down into smaller molecules. Just imagine that you have eaten a meal that consisted of fish and rice. You know that rice contains starch, and starch is a very large carbohydrate molecule. Fish contains two types of molecules, proteins as well as fats. So when you eat this meal, the fish and rice go into your stomach and then ultimately into your intestines. And both these organs, the stomach and intestines, are lined with cells. So these large molecules such as the fats, proteins and carbohydrates, they cannot diffuse across the cell surface membranes of these cells. So the large molecules must first be converted into simpler, smaller substances, which should be water soluble and which should be small enough to diffuse through the cell surface membrane. Like the larger molecules are broken down into smaller ones in the process of digestion. Food is digested by digestive enzymes, and some of the common digestive enzymes include amylase that digests starch, maltase that digests maltose, protease that digests proteins, and lipase that digests fatty acids. So we know that enzymes, they either build up or they break down complex substances. The enzyme catalyzed reactions can be classified into two types, two basic categories. The anabolic reactions. Now, what are anabolic reactions? Such reactions involve building up of large molecules from smaller ones and usually require an input of energy. So when molecules are built up, larger ones from smaller ones, we also name such reactions as synthesis reactions. For example, amino acids taken into the cells may be used to build up proteins. The cytoplasm contains special enzymes to catalyze such reactions. So amino acids are the smaller building blocks of proteins. They join in chains and they form polypeptides. And polypeptide, the chains of polypeptides link together and they form a larger protein molecule. So this is an example of an anabolic reaction or a synthesis reaction. The next category is catabolic reactions. These are reactions that involve the breakdown of large molecules into smaller ones and energy is released. Like large molecules in food are converted to smaller molecules by the digestive enzymes. If we talk about cellular respiration, then glucose is broken down to release energy and form carbon dioxide and water. And this process involves a series of chemical reactions. Each is catalyzed by a different enzyme. The enzymes act together to completely break down glucose. Another example could be of hydrogen peroxide. This is sometimes produced during the chemical reactions inside the cells. This is a toxic substance to the cells. So both plant and animal cells, they produce an enzyme which is named as catalase to break down hydrogen peroxide to water and oxygen. So when hydrogen peroxide is broken down into water and oxygen, its harmful and toxic effect is removed. A catalase is especially abundant in the blood and the liver of mammals. Now let's talk about the naming system of enzymes. How do we name different enzymes? So the name of the enzyme, it shows the substance on which the enzyme acts, and the name it ends in the suffix ase. For example, lipase refers to an enzyme that acts on lipids. Protease refers to an enzyme that acts on proteins, and so on. Classification of enzymes. So enzymes are classified according to the chemical reactions that they catalyze. Digestion is an example of a chemical reaction, which is hydrolysis, breaking down of larger molecules into smaller one, or you can say catabolism. Hydro means water and lysis means splitting. So in hydrolysis, water molecules are needed to break down a complex molecule into simpler molecules. The enzymes that catalyze hydrolytic reactions are called hydrolases. We have some examples of hydrolases. Number one, we have carbohydrases, which digest carbohydrates, and the examples of carbohydrases include amylases, like the salivary amylase and the pancreatic amylase, which digests starch. Then we have cellulases as another example of carbohydrases, and cellulase enzyme digests cellulose. Cellulose, you all know, it's the component of plant cell wall, so it is not produced by mammals. Then another category of hydrolases is protease, the enzyme which digests proteins like the pepsin in stomach. And another category is lipases. For example, the stepsin in pancreatic juice, and lipases, they digest or they catalyze lipids, the hydrolysis of lipids, fats, into fatty acids and glycerols. Let us now discuss the characteristics of enzymes. So the first and the foremost characteristic feature of enzymes is that they speed up chemical reactions, or we can say they alter the rates of chemical reactions that occur within a cell. So how do they speed up chemical reactions? Enzymes, they actually lower down the activation energy needed to start the reaction, and hence the chemical reaction is speeded up. And you all know that activation energy is the energy required to start a reaction. Next characteristic feature of enzymes is that they are required in minute amounts. They are very efficient molecules. and you know that they remain unchanged in reactions that they catalyze. So the same enzyme molecules can be used over and over again. So a small amount of enzyme can catalyze a large number of chemical reactions. Like we can take an example of a spoonful of washing powder. Washing powder contains enzymes. So a spoonful of washing powder which contains enzyme is enough to wash a large number of clothes. Next, enzymes are specific in their action. They are highly specific in their actions. For example, amylases can only act on starch. They cannot act on proteins or they cannot act on fats. So they are specific. If we talk about amylases, they are specific for starch only. Similarly, if we talk about proteases, they can act only on proteins, and lipases simultaneously can act on lipids or fats. So this enzyme specificity means that each chemical reaction inside a cell is catalyzed by a unique enzyme. An enzyme is specific due to its three-dimensional shape. And the lock and key hypothesis explains how the shape of an enzyme affects the way it functions. We will now discuss the functions of enzymes. How do enzymes function and what are the basic functions of all enzymes? So let's start with the functions of enzymes. They break down large molecules into smaller substances that can be easily absorbed by the body, just like we had discussed previously in the process of digestion. Next, they help in generating energy in the body. One of the enzyme, ATP synthase, is the enzyme that is involved in the synthesis of energy. Then enzymes are responsible for the movement of ions across the plasma membrane. They perform a number of biochemical reactions including oxidation, reduction, hydrolysis, and also they are used to eliminate the toxic substances from the body. Mechanism of action of enzymes is explained by the lock and key hypothesis. So this is a figure representing the lock and key hypothesis. You can see 4 things in this figure. Number 1 is the substrate. Number 2 is the active site. Number 3 is the enzyme itself. And number 4 is the enzyme substrate complex that is formed when number 1 fits into number 2. That is, when substrate fits into the active site. Now, what is a substrate? What is active site? What is an enzyme substrate complex? Let's see in the next slide. The substances on which enzymes act are called substrates. For example, protein is a substrate and protease is the enzyme which acts on proteins. Similarly, lipids are substrates for the enzyme lipase. Starch is the substrate for the enzyme amide, and so on. So substrates are the substances on which enzymes act. Active sites are the depressions or pockets on the surface of an enzyme molecule into which the substrate molecules can fit, just like a lock and a key. The enzyme is the lock and the substrate is the key. So always remember, enzyme is the lock and substrate is the key. Then the enzyme substrate complex. When the substrate binds to the enzyme, it forms an enzyme substrate complex, or the product that is formed. It is the enzyme substrate complex. So reactions, they can take place at the active site to convert the substrate molecules into the product molecules or the enzyme substrate complex. and the product molecule separates, leaving the enzyme molecule unchanged and free to combine again with more substrate molecules. So once an enzyme substrate complex is formed, then the product will leave the enzyme and the enzyme is now free to combine with other substrate molecules. One enzyme can have many active sites, like you can see it in this a diagram of the lock and key hypothesis. The figure over here will explain it even clearly, that how the substrate binds to the active site. You all know that molecules are always in the state of motion. They possess kinetic energy and they are always colliding with each other. So the substrate molecule has to collide with the enzyme in such a way that it fits into the active site, because active site is designed for a specific substrate to fit in itself. Okay, so if we talk about this figure, what is happening? An enzyme, it has a specific 3D shape, and you know that it has a depression, which is the active site, and the substrate fits into the active site. So only the substrate with a 3D shape that is complementary to that of the active site can fit into the enzyme. This results in the formation of enzyme substrate complex. The enzyme is the lock and the substrate is the key. The substrate fits into the enzyme just like a key fits into a lock, and this is called the lock and key hypothesis. While the substrate is attached to the active site, chemical reactions occur and the substrate is converted into the products. Later, the products leave the active site and the enzyme remains unchanged. Another example is given. This is an example of an enzyme-controlled reaction. Such as this is the joining up of two glucose molecules to form a molecule of maltose. You can see that the enzyme and substrate molecules have complementary shapes, just like adjacent pieces of jigsaw puzzle, so that they can fit together. Other substrate molecules would not fit into this enzyme as they would have wrong shape. For example, the substrate molecule in figure B would not fit the enzyme molecule in figure A. And the product, which is substance AB, is released by the enzyme molecule, and the enzyme is then free to repeat the reaction with more substrate molecules. Molecules of the two substances might have combined without the enzyme being present, but they would have done it very slowly. So it could have taken hours or even days to happen without the enzyme. By bringing the substances close together, the enzyme molecule makes the reaction takes place much more rapidly. So that is why we need enzymes. It has also been found that the enzyme catalase, which is a very common enzyme found in most of the cells, it can break down 40,000 molecules of hydrogen peroxide per second. And a complete chemical reaction takes only a few seconds when the right enzyme is present. So this lock and key hypothesis is very important for the mechanism of action of enzyme. This shows the specificity of enzyme action. When we say that enzymes are specific in their action, this is how the lock and key hypothesis explains it. Factors that affect the activity of enzymes. The two factors that we are going to discuss are temperature and pH. So enzymes, they are affected by temperature. Every enzyme has an optimum temperature at which it is most active. And for most of the enzymes, the optimum temperature is about 40 to 45 degrees Celsius. It is almost near to the body temperature of humans. Enzymes, they are inactive at low temperatures. At low temperatures, the kinetic energy is low, hence the chances of substrate molecules colliding with the enzymes are very low. So increasing the temperature from low to optimum temperature increases the rate of enzymatic reactions, and raising the temperature also increases the kinetic energy of molecules, and the chance of the substrate fitting into the active site increases, and this will ultimately increase the rate of formation of enzyme substrate complex or the products. Then for every 10 degrees Celsius rise in temperature, the rate of enzyme reaction is doubled until the optimum temperature is reached. And increasing the temperature above the optimum temperature causes a rapid decrease in the rate of reaction. You know that enzymes are made up of proteins. High temperature will break the bonds that keep the enzyme protein in shape, and the active site of the enzyme loses its original shape, and the substrate molecule can now no longer fit into the active site. What happens at temperatures above optimum temperature? So at temperature above optimum temperature, the enzyme becomes denatured. The higher the temperature, the faster would be the rate of denaturation. Most enzymes, they are completely denatured above 60 degrees Celsius. Let's talk about the effect of temperature on the rate of enzymatic reactions with the help of a graph. So you can see over here on x-axis they have given temperature, and on y-axis the rate of reaction or the enzymatic activity. So at point A, the enzyme is less active because it is the lowest temperature. At B, as the temperature rises, enzyme activity increases, as indicated by the increase in the rate of reaction it catalyzes. Usually, the enzyme is twice as active for every 10 degrees Celsius rise in temperature until the optimum temperature is reached. So at C, the optimum temperature is reached, enzyme is most active at C, and rate of reaction is highest at point C. At D, that is beyond the optimum temperature, again the enzymatic activity decreases, and at point E, the enzyme has lost its ability to catalyze the reaction, and we say that the enzyme is now denatured. So what is denaturation? It is the change in the three-dimensional structure of an enzyme or any other soluble protein caused by heat or chemicals such as acids or alkalis. Again, there is another figure to explain the process of denaturation. At temperatures above 45 degrees Celsius, some enzymes are denatured, and enzymes, they lose their active sites when they are denatured. So the three-dimensional structure of an enzyme, it plays a very important role in its function, as we had discussed earlier about the lock and key hypothesis. So denaturation will result in the loss or the alteration in the enzyme's active site, and obviously when the enzyme's active site is lost, then no reaction will occur because now the substrate cannot fit into the specific active site. So when an enzyme is denatured, it can no longer act as the catalyst. Another factor that affects the rate of enzyme activity is pH, and we are going to discuss it with the help of graphs as well. So enzymes, they are affected by pH. They are affected by the acidity or the alkalinity of the solutions in which they act. Some work best in acidic conditions, whereas some work best in the intestinal conditions or alkaline conditions. Like if we talk about pepsin, it works best in stomach. In stomach, the pH is acidic, whereas some intestinal enzymes, they work best in the alkaline solutions. And again, extreme changes in pH can denature the enzyme. So the protein the enzyme which digests protein is in the stomach, and it works well in pH of 2. And at this pH, the enzyme amylase from the saliva will not work. This means that enzymes have specific pH values for themselves as well. Inside the cells, most enzymes will work best in neutral conditions. Neutral conditions means pH 7. You all know about the pH scale. From 1 to 6, it's the acidic condition, and from 8 to 13 is the basic or alkaline condition. So the pH now what is optimum pH or optimum temperature? The pH or the temperature at which an enzyme works best is called the optimum pH or the optimum temperature. If we talk about the conditions in the duodenum, the conditions in the duodenum, they are slightly alkaline. So the optimum pH for the pancreatic lipase is 8. Most of the enzymes, keep in mind that most of the enzymes, they work best in the optimum pH of 7, that is in neutral condition. Here is a graph that can show the effect of pH on enzymatic activities. The first graph, the red one, shows that pepsin is an enzyme and it is working best at acidic conditions. Then you have the second graph represented by the green color, and it is showing most of the enzymes, and you can see that the optimum pH for most of the enzymes is 7. And the last graph, the blue one, shows the enzymes which are working best in alkaline conditions, like the pancreatic lipase. Different enzymes have different pH values.